Let me just start off by saying that if you're one of those parents that is going to end up giving their kids like ugly Christmas sweaters or ugly Christmas socks or underwear as presents, don't be surprised if they end up throwing your old ass into an old home. That was your fault, okay? Buy your kids Legos, action figures, video games, I don't know, something to make them love you more. You definitely can buy your children's love with money, but if you buy them kick-ass presents, they'll usually love you more. I don't make up the rules. That's just the way that it is, okay? Anyways, all jokes aside, guys, in today's video, I thought we would try something a little bit different. I essentially thought that we would revisit a topic that I touched on a couple of videos ago, maybe like a week ago by the time this video goes up. But I essentially talked about the potential of like some of the licenses moving around between different OEMs. I talked about potentially Hasbro losing like the Marvel license and potentially maybe the Star Wars license, so on and so forth. Maybe McFarlane moving on from the DC multiverse line, and this was all pure speculation. This is based on just stuff that I'm reading, whether it was articles or other content creators talking about it. I'm not an insider. I don't have any information that you guys don't have out there, but this has been kind of like a long-standing conversation I have within the collecting community. But today I thought we would kind of switch it up a little bit by including some of the I read in the previous video, just comments that I thought were really interesting. A lot of you guys had some pretty unique perspectives. You guys made some very valid points, and so in today's video I thought we would kind of talk a little bit about some of these. I'm not really going to get too in deep because I think the last video had like over 100 comments, and I'm not going to go through every single one of them. I think like 2 of the comments were just like 2 people getting into like these gigantic arguments. So I'm not really going to go into every single comment, but I'll mention the ones that, even though I did read most of them, I'll go into the ones that I think had like some solid points. A lot of these guys have commented on my channel before. And so, as always, I really appreciate when people give me feedback, when people just, even if it's a little bit of hate, but when you drop a comment just to let me know your thoughts on what it is that I'm talking about, and I really do appreciate that. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at some of the comments left behind from you guys, because I do feel like they're great talking points. So let's get straight into the first couple of comments here. And I'm not going to try to like pronounce everybody's username, because a lot of usernames have like 30 different number digits, or it's like John Doe likes french fries or something random like that. And I'm a grown man. I feel kind of stupid repeating some of the usernames here, but like the first 2 users, pretty straightforward. And this is actually a point that I made personally in the previous video, and that is that as much as a lot of us want to see something different, we want to see like a kind of just a refresh button hit here, just something new, something innovative and creative. We also have to consider the fact that our collections are pretty fleshed out by now. And I'm not going to speak for everybody. I'm only going to speak for myself, but I do see a lot of other big collectors out there. I mean, there are people that probably have way more action figures than I do in their bins or in their displays, up on their shelves. And can you just stop to imagine the magnitude of something like that happening? Let's just hypothetically say that the Marvel Legends line goes, for example, to McFarlane, and he decides to make it a 1/10/7-inch scale. That would completely obliterate your display. I mean, how many figures do you really feel like you could, kind of mix and match with your original Hasbro Marvel Legends? Not that many. I think it can be incredibly discouraging to think that you may have to start over. I mean, there may be some collectors out there that really don't care about scaling. They don't care about mixing and matching different manufacturers, but I think those collectors are in the minority. Most people are like very passionate about their action figures. They need them to scale correctly. And I think the style is another big point of emphasis. Let's say hypothetically, even if McFarlane decided to keep the Marvel Legends line at the 1/12 scale or close to the 1/12 scale, I still think that they would look completely different to what Hasbro has been offering us. I mean, just for starters, McFarlane loves to use like that soft pelvic plastic area. A lot of people like to refer to it as like the diaper area. And he doesn't have pinless technology, sometimes doesn't have butterfly joints. His ab crunch isn't all that great. So, things of that nature, it's just not going to mix very well. So even if he was to get the license and change up the scale, you could potentially see a completely different style. I mean, the figures just wouldn't look anywhere near to what the Marvel Legends look like nowadays. So those are very valid points. Like I said, it's something that I mentioned myself in the previous video, but yeah, it's something that I think collectors think a lot about. If it were to happen, it would kind of shake up their entire display, and I'm sure a lot of these guys are like losing sleep over it. They're probably, you know, going through hair loss because of how incredibly insane this is. Maybe not, but you get where I'm going. Anyways, the next couple of comments were also very interesting, because I did float around the idea of like Jada Toys picking up, for example, Star Wars or Marvel. And I hadn't even thought about this, but this is actually a very valid point. Jada Toys, up to this point, has not really shown the capacity to give us or to mass produce action figures at a like consistent rate. Sometimes you'll get the first wave from them from the Street Fighter line, which again, I'm going off of memory, but I think was like Ryu, Fei Long, and Chun-Li. All of them were released, I think, simultaneously, and I believe I ended up maybe seeing Ryu the first time around at a Target, but they were like very far in between. Like you got one figure, and then like maybe a month or two you would see like the Fei Long and the Chun-Li. And even when you receive that first wave, I haven't even seen the second wave in stores yet. Like I haven't seen a Bison. I haven't even seen who is it, the Dalsim, I think, is the other figure released in that particular wave. And I know we're getting a Cammy very soon here, but I just don't think they've been very consistent. It seems like it's almost months apart in between the waves. And I wonder how Jada Toys would be able to mass produce Marvel Legends. It just feels like there would be like this huge gap in between waves. And clearly Disney's not going to be interested in something like that. They clearly want to maximize their potential for profit. And if they're only releasing, let's say hypothetically, if they're releasing like 20 figures on a yearly basis, I don't think they're going to be very upbeat about that. They need somebody that's able to handle like the mass production of quite a few figures on a yearly basis. And let's be brutally honest, Marvel Legends or Hasbro at the moment is probably releasing, I don't know, like 200 figures a year, while so far Jada Toys has only been giving us, at least from the Street Fighter line, for example, in store, I've only seen the 3 figures. I haven't seen anything else in store, which makes me believe that just Jada Toys probably won't be able to handle a license like Hasbro or a license like the Marvel Legends line quite the way that Hasbro has. Now, I'm not sure if that's because they don't have a big license. That's another potential possibility. Like maybe they just they haven't really fleshed out their full capability because they don't really need to. I mean, the Street Fighter line is a very small, limited line that not everybody's interested in. Same thing with Mega Man, similar to like their their mascots for the cereals and things of that nature. Like there's not a huge fan base for them, so maybe they don't need to be churning those particular figures out as consistently as where, like, let's say if they were to get the Marvel Legends line, the rate at which they produced action figures would probably be like 3 to 5 times what it is right now. But as of the moment, I think that's a huge cause for concern, and it's not something that I really had thought about. But that's a great point from the community. Maybe Jada Toys just isn't able to handle a big license right now. Maybe they can continue working in the small market, you know, picking up some video game franchises. We've already seen them work on Mega Man, Street Fighter, the mascots, and I believe they just did a couple of Cyberpunk action figures. And then let's not forget that first Scooby-Doo wave that we're still waiting on. So maybe they can continue to kind of like build themselves up, build the name, the brand up a little bit more, continue working with these small little licenses, and then eventually work themselves up to getting like a really big license, like maybe Marvel or Star Wars, which was another big name that was thrown out there. There were also at least a couple of comments that floated the idea of maybe not having as many exclusive licensing deals with these manufacturers at the moment. Like, for example, there's only like one 1/12 collectible Marvel Legends line. There's only one for Star Wars, and there's only one for DC Multiverse. But there's the potential, and again, a couple of different users floated this idea of maybe not having exclusive deals. And how they would structure this, I have no idea. I mean, I have a tiny little reptilian / dinosaur brain that's like way beyond my pay rate, but they could potentially break it down. I mean, I already mentioned DC Multiverse line, or just McFarlane in general, and how he owns all these like little sublines. He has like the Page Punchers, he has the Collector's Edition line, he has the DC Multiverse, he has the DC Direct. And so maybe they could break those down a little bit. Like, for example, the DC Direct line, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong here, but I think that's the line from McFarlane that sometimes veers closer to the 112 scale. So maybe because he doesn't really specialize in the 112 scale, like the highly articulated 112 scale at that price point, maybe that could move on to somebody else. And then maybe Jada Toys could also be a part of the Star Wars universe or the Marvel Legends line. Maybe they split it up to where, and again, just spitballing here, maybe Hasbro keeps the license of live action stuff, and then maybe Jada Toys just does like the comic book stuff or the animated stuff for Star Wars. Or same thing with Marvel, maybe one particular manufacturer just focuses in on the comic book based stuff, you know, where the renditions or the body molds or the accessories are closer to the comic book versions, and then maybe like the Hasbro side of the business focuses in more on the live action stuff, like the live action MCU stuff. So those were great ideas that were floated as well. And I have to say, somebody else brought this up. I'm not sure if I can find the comment, but I'll try looking for it. But essentially somebody tried to place some of the blame on Disney rather than Marvel Legends, or in some cases even McFarlane or Hasbro, or whoever it is that had the license for some of these big franchises. And I'm 100% on board with that, because if you really start to break down things, I mean, I'll give you guys an example. The whole DC cinematic universe and how convoluted that entire situation really was, that really hurt action figure sales. Not everybody was interested in buying a Flash action figure. Not everybody was interested in the newest Aquaman installment. Even in the Marvel Legends universe, for example, not everybody was into the Marvels. Not everybody is lining up to buy action figures based on the new Acolyte series. There are people that absolutely hate the character of Agatha, for example, and she got an entire series, and I'm sure there's probably an upcoming wave for that particular series. And I mean, does it really need to be released? I don't know. And it really is a burden that a lot of these manufacturers have to carry. If you're Hasbro, you have to make action figures based on some of these live action upcoming projects. Same thing with McFarlane. Even though he may not really support the DC Cinematic Universe, I mean, now maybe he's a little bit more excited because of, James Gunn taking over and, him having like a great repertoire or just a great resume of superhero projects under his belt. And so that may be a great insight into the future of the DC Cinematic Universe. But before that, it was in complete disarray. I absolutely hated the Shazam movies. I didn't really care for Black Adam. I mean, these projects, I think, really sunk the manufacturers a little bit deeper than they needed to. And it really wasn't their fault. They actually manufactured some great action figures based on some of those live action projects. But because the critics absolutely hated the live action projects, whether they were movies or whether they were shows, the collectors were like very reluctant to actually jump in on some of these collectibles. The She-Hulk action figure, for example, or the Kate Bishop action figure, those are great examples. They're like really well designed, really well built action figures. In the case of She-Hulk, she's like 7 inches, really solid articulation, pinless technology, and then Kate Bishop came with quite a few different accessories. But because people really hated the live action stuff, they really didn't pick them up. She-Hulk was on sale, I think, for like $5 to $6 for the longest time, even though it was a really good solid figure. And maybe everybody holds on to what they already have because the future does seem a little bit bright. So only time will tell. This is just my personal opinion, and I kind of wanted to sprinkle on some different comments that I ran into during going through some of the comments in my previous video. So if you guys like this type of content, if you like the idea of integrating some comments or some feedback from you guys, let me know down below in the comment section. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, for showing support, and make sure to stay tuned, especially if you like just nerds rambling on about action figures. This is the perfect spot for you. I do plan on making like at least 2 to 3 more videos with topics related to like licensing moves or things of that nature. and then just like DC Multiverse action figures within like the next few videos. So hopefully you guys enjoy this type of content. And I know I've been saying this quite often throughout the entire channel, but I'm trying to ramp up how many videos I can upload on a weekly basis. I think we're closer to like 2 to 3, whereas I want to be closer to like 4 and 5. So hopefully the holidays help me out a little bit with that. We get a couple of days here at home. I can work on some different projects that I have upcoming for you guys. So definitely stay tuned, stay safe out there. And as always, the most important part of this entire hobby is to enjoy your action figures. Pose them, photograph them, have fun with them. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.